We are entering one of the best times of the year because not only are we getting a UFC card every Saturday, even though it might be an Apex card like the one that just got done, an absolute atrocity of a card. That was not a UFC level card. Okay, that was like an LFA card at tops. Okay, but now we're entering the stage of the year where we get the UFC cards on Saturday and we get Dana White Contender Series on Tuesday. 10 straight weeks. Tuesday fights. Usually 5 fights, sometimes 4. One of them might drop off, but this week we got 5. This is the best time of the year, man. We get fights on Tuesday. We got fights on Saturday. We have fights all the time. Not only does that mean we get to watch the fights, but we also get to bet on the fights. And we're going to go through every single week. I want to break down these fights after I've watched some tape on them, after I've looked at the betting lines. I'm going to give you some insight of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling about these fights. We got 5 of them. Let's dive right into it. First fight of the night. We got some flyweights. Antoine Ho, very young, 23 years of age. Yes, these are screenshots from Tapology. Full transparency. Okay, I ran a half marathon today. Did not feel like making slides, and I can't even use that as an excuse because you're going to see Tapology screenshots for the rest of the Contender Series. Okay, I'm not this guy that's going to sit there and rewrite every single statistic about this guy, what his height is, what his weight is, what his reach is. I'm not going to rewrite that. I'll just screenshot it from Tapology, okay? It's the same shit. Same shit. Antoine Ho, very young. Vietnamese fighter, but he trains at the MMA lab. Very good gym. Very good gym. There's another MMA lab later on this card we'll talk about, but his opponent, Lonier Kavanagh. He's Chinese, but he trains in England at Great Britain top team, also very young. I think both these flyweights are UFC level, and I think both of them will eventually make it to the UFC if they don't get a win here. Both guys undefeated, both guys 6-0. A lot of similarities about these guys, except Antoine Ho, I think, based on watching his film, is a little bit less technical, I think a little bit more green, and that doesn't mean he can't win, though. I think this guy is explosive. He's always going to be looking for a finish. I would probably rate his grappling a little bit higher. I think Kavanagh maybe not has had to show his grappling as much, but Antoine Ho on the regional scene, he's shown me some pretty good grappling. I think his ability to get through scrambles and end up in good positions could work well for him in this fight if he forces the scramble on the feet. Antoine Ho does tend to do a lot of stuff that's just not really necessary. He kind of stands in front of you, puts the pressure on, but isn't really throwing a ton, and he's doing these like weird stance switches that really do nothing. Like he's just standing right in front of you. No feint or anything. Just stance switch. Almost like Corey Sandhagen was against Umar Nurmagomedov. It ain't really doing much. But he's out there moving. So I don't know. I guess that's okay. On the feet, the guy's powerful and he's explosive, but he doesn't really put together combinations. And I think that's where Kavanagh could set himself apart here. He's a guy that's going to stick to a jab. He's going to stick to the low kick, and he's sharp with his combinations. He's a guy that will put them together a lot more than Antoine Ho. I can't say Ho. I just said it. And Antoine Ho. What a name. And Antoine, he's more of a guy that wants to knock you out with one punch or get into these type of exchanges where he can land something. He's a guy that'll throw, though. He's aggressive, and I think he has a very good chance to win this fight because we see a lot of volatility in these Dana White Contender Series fights. Like, I think Kavanagh's probably the better fighter. Is he worth minus 260 in my opinion? Not at all. Not at all because flyweight is also a division where you see a lot of volatility as well. So if anything, I would probably bet on the underdog. But for a straight pick, I think Kavanagh probably should win. I think technicality, I think he has the better technique. I think he's probably the more polished fighter at this stage. And he should win. He should be a favorite, but this is a very, very generous price tag, I think, on Kavanagh. I think Antoine Ho is definitely a live dog. We'll move on. We got Jose Delgado and Ernie Juarez. So Delgado stepping in on short notice. Juarez was supposed to fight the Brito guy, and Brito had some visa issues, I believe. So in steps Delgado, MMA lab guy as well. If you watch his fights, you'll see Benson Henderson in his corner. He is the favorite here. He's a tall guy. Mainly a southpaw striker, but he'll mix in a stance switch here or there and go orthodox. But he's going to rely on his kicks, specifically a body kick, a left hand down the pipe. And honestly, watching the guy, he looks kind of slow, but it's actually very effective. He does tend to leave himself out there on the feet. He got clipped at the beginning of one of his fights, got dropped badly with a right hand, but battled back and ended up getting a win over there, or winning that fight. And I think in this fight, Juarez, from what I've seen on his tape, is he's a guy that's very hittable early, and he kind of just wants to weather the storm and take over late. I think he's probably going to have a tough time doing that against Delgado, because Delgado has shown pretty good cardio. He's shown a good ability to scramble. Juarez just going to walk you down. He's going to throw these boxing combinations. He's a Stockton guy. He's a Stockton fighter. Going to walk you down, throw these boxing combinations, try to take you to the ground, try to wear you out, and try to win later in the rounds, or take over and win by decision. And I think that'll probably be tough. I think Delgado is the more sharper striker. I think he's durable. I think he has cardio. I think he's the rightful favorite here. Again, it's a little bit pricey, man. Minus 250 on a guy taking the fight on short notice. I do think he's the better fighter, but minus 250 is pretty rich. I'll take him for a pick. But, you know, if this fight does extend, maybe Juarez can implement some of that just brute strength, that just brute, I'm going to break your will type of fighting, and maybe he can get a late finish. But I think Delgado is the better fighter at this point. I'm going to take him for a pick. Not sure I'll bet on this one, though. Definitely got to keep an eye out for some props. I don't know what's going to be available through these books, but, you know, Juarez round 3 or a Delgado by decision or something like that. I think both guys are tough. It'd be tough to see a finish from either guy, but this is the Contender Series. This is where finishes they get you a contract, so we'll see. But Delgado is the pick. Brings us to Bruno Lopes and Mikhail Sazhiniani. This dude, Bruno Lopes, got cold cocked his last time on the Contender Series, and man, it was one of the biggest upsets of the year. Whether it was Dana White Contender Series or not, like, the dude was a massive favorite because he was undefeated at the time. He's a guy that has some good wins. I mean, he beat Gregory Rodriguez like years ago, knocked him out. And he looks the part, man. He looks like a really skilled fighter. And he's pretty athletic, good ground game, good clean hands, good kickboxing. And then he just got clocked in the first round against Brendan Barrio, who has shown in the UFC he really ain't good at all. So I don't know what that says about Bruno Lopes. Maybe it's a one-off, but based on his skills, I think he's definitely the better fighter here. Mikhail Sazhiniani, he's been crushing cans on the regional scenes, man. Like, you look at his fights, you watch his fights, some of these opponents, they're just not very good. And he really doesn't stand out to me when I watch him in these fights. Like, he's a guy he wants to get inside, and he wants to throw these combinations, throw wild hooks, get you to the ground and pound you. I don't know. I don't see how he has success in this fight against Bruno Lopes. Like, sure, he could catch him with something big and knock him out, but I think over the course of 15 minutes, Bruno Lopes probably does the better work, if not finishes Mikhail Sazhiniani. So I'm going to take Bruno Lopes for a pick. I think Lopes by submission might be a nice little sneaky prop once it comes out, because Sazhiniani's been submitted a couple times, and Bruno Lopes is a great ground game if he wants to not get cold cocked this time on the Contender Series. Might want to just take the fight to the ground and take the path of least resistance, because Sazhiniani, not the greatest grappler, but he does have some decent wrestling, and he's going to push a pace. But Bruno Lopes is the better fighter, in my opinion, and he is the rightful favorite. Minus 230 isn't too crazy. I could maybe put it in a parlay, and I'd kind of expect this line to grow. If you remember last time, Bruno Lopes, I don't know if it's Lopes or Lopez, but Bruno, he's opened at like minus 300, minus 400. I think he grew to like minus 900, minus 800, like something crazy. That happens with these Contender Series lines. So that's why you got to hop on them early. They steam one way a lot, especially if a guy just looks like he should win pretty easily. And sometimes they lose, sometimes they don't, but Bruno Lopes is the pick. From here, before we break down the last two fights, I will ask you to join the Humble Fight Picks Premium membership. It's where you get the UFC, the PFL, and the Dana White Contender Series bets every single week. Not the picks, the bets, where we're putting our money. We're positive 28.22 units year to date after last the card that just ended like 2 hours ago, hour and a half ago. So we're winning money. We always got DFS plays in there as well, underdog, fantasy, and better. Jump in the Home 5 Picks premium membership. Links down in the description. That's where you get all the UFC bets. Let's get back to the breakdown. Mang Ding taking on Rami Ahmed. Ahmed. I love saying that. Ahmed. I think I'm saying it right. Ahmed. This Rami guy, 33 years old. He's been training down here in South Florida for a while. Like everywhere. Literally, I've seen him at, not in person, but on his Instagram. I've seen him at MMA Masters, American Top Team, American Combat Gym. I think he's been at the Goat Shed before, like literally everywhere in South Florida gyms. So, and you watch him fight, you could tell because he is a very good striker. I mean, he's a guy that, it kind of reminds me of like a rich man's Martian Prachniow, but a very, very poor man's Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. When I say that, it's like a karate style, but with like a little bit more power and a lot less finesse. Like Wonderboy is so fluid, doesn't get hit all that often, but you relate him to a Martian Prachniow who has like little to no power, and he's really not throwing anything to hurt you. Like Rami Ahmed's throwing a lot to hurt you, but it's just not as fluid as a Wonderboy Thompson. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, I think that's a pretty good analogy. Okay, poor man's Wonderboy, rich man's Martian Prachniow. He's a welterweight, and he's been off for a while. I think he's been off for like a year and a half. And this guy's 33. He's taking this fight on short notice too. Mang Ding's original opponent pulled out. And it's some of his wins, man, especially recently. I watched this one fight where he fought this 46-year-old dude who had a 3-2 record. The dude's 46. He had a 3-2 record. His 3 wins were against guys who were 0-0. I gotta sneeze. His 3 wins were against guys who were 0-0. So this guy was like some Colombian guy, 46. It like shouldn't have even been sanctioned, bro. Like I don't know how that fight was ever put together, but he's okay. Like he's a good striker. Mang Ding, on the other hand, a guy who's had a million fights, fucking 42 fights. And that's just what these Chinese dudes do. Like when you're from China, you live in China, you fight like every month, it seems like. It seems like these dudes have like 40 fights before they get into the UFC. They're all against like just trash competition. Like you pick up your wins and then you take your losses here and there, and it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, once you hit, your 40th fight, then the UFC starts looking at you. This Mang Ding guy, he's an okay kickboxer. He's not a grappler. Neither is Rami Ahmed. I think this is probably going to be a stand-up battle where Ahmed is landing a lot of kicks and Mang Ding's trying to get on the inside. He's more of a boxer. Like he's got some kicks in his arsenal, but from what I've watched, he's a guy that wants to land the hands a lot more than kick at range. So it's a kicker versus a boxer in my opinion, and I'm gonna take the kicker here in Rami Ahmed. I think Mang Ding, I mean, he's got a lot more experience and maybe he can mix in some grappling, but on the feet, I think Ahmed could probably chew up the legs, and his boxing is pretty decent as well. So I got to go with Rami Ahmed, but this is one that is very sketchy in my opinion. If Ahmed gets to be a bigger favorite, I don't think it's worth it. Minus 250 is even a little bit rich in my opinion. Mang Ding, definitely live, but ultimately he's got to get past those kicks, and I think he might have a pretty hard time doing so. So give me Rami Ahmed, 4-pick. Lastly, the last fight of the night, the main event. Mansour Abdul-Malik, 5-0, 26 years of age, taking on Wes Schultz. Now, Wes Schultz, fellow Wisconsinite. Shout out my boy, Wes Schultz. Don't know him at all. But from what I've seen, he wrestled at UW La Crosse. I got some ties to UW La Crosse. Now, people will say, D3 wrestling. Midwest D3 wrestling is pretty good. Okay, he's a pretty good wrestler. Wes Schultz is a pretty good wrestler, pretty good grappler. Trains out of Pura Vida BJJ, which is one of the better gyms in the Milwaukee area. If you're in the Milwaukee area, you either train at Pura Vida or you train at Rufusport. If you're really good, you usually train at Rufusport. If you're okay, If you're more like the casual guy, you train at Pura Vida. Now, Pura Vida has produced some pretty decent guys. Montel Jackson, Ode Osborne back in the day before he moved to Las Vegas and then just started losing a bunch. But Wes Schultz, he's a liability on the feet, in my opinion. He's a massive liability, but he's a pretty decent grappler. He's slick with his back takes. He's slick with his scrambles, and his only loss was to Dylan Budka. And I think that's a tough matchup, like another really good wrestler, and he can't really get on him on the feet because he's not that great of a striker. So tough matchup for him, and I think this is another tough matchup for him as well because Mansour Abdul-Malik, training out MMA Masters, is a big dude, explosive, very, very big power on the feet, very powerful ground and pound. So if Malik gets him down to the ground, I think Wes is probably going to have a tough time looking for subs or looking for reversals, looking for sweeps, because Malik is probably going to be trying to bash his face in. And on the feet, I think Abdul-Malik is just so much more explosive that if he lands something on Wes Schultz, it ain't going to look good. So I got to go with Mansour Abdul-Malik for a pick. I kind of expect this line to just go to the moon, honestly. I don't think Wes Schultz is a bad fighter by any means. I don't think he's UFC level. I think he's one of these guys that could probably sit around the regional scene, maybe get into like Bellator, get a couple fights, pick up some wins. Like, he's not bad at all. He could definitely pick up a win. And honestly, if he grows to like a plus 600 underdog, then you might be even forced to take a shot. Because we don't know what Malik looks like, outside of round one. Wes Schultz can go 3 rounds. And if Malik blows his load in the first round, then it might look pretty bad. But first straight pick, I got to go with Mansour Abdul-Malik. And we'll see if I bet on him. If you want to bet on him, you should probably get on him early because I think this line's going to grow. But he is definitely the better fighter at this point, and I think he could probably find an early finish. But if he doesn't, it gets sketchy. That's it for Dana White Contender Series. I will have bets on the Contender Series throughout the entire season. This is episode number 1. Once again, those bets will be posted down in the Homo Fight Picks Premium membership. Join up now. You can join for a week, a month, doesn't matter. Links down in the description. Hop in there. Let's make some money. Appreciate you for watching. Until next time, hey, Job Picks. Sign